This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 14 of Healthy Critters Radio on the Horse Radio Network. Healthy Critters Radio is brought to you by BiostarUS. Find them online at biostarus.com.
On today's show, we have Dr. Tom Schell from Novell Research to talk about curcumin and turmeric. In Tigapedia, we're going to talk about fly sprays, and in the Critter Nutrition Corner, we're going to talk about the effects of stress and how it relates to the brain and the GI tract. In Coffee Clutch, we actually are going to talk about vacations with our dogs. Woo!
Woo!
This is Tigger Montague.
And this is Patty Perucci. And you're listening to Healthy Critters Radio on the Horse Radio Network. Tiggerella. We got a great show.
Patty P. Oh my gosh. Dr. Tumeric.
I know. You
Yeah.
warned me.
I did. I that guy and I can get on the phone and nonstop talk about food, turmeric, curcumin, inflammation, the GI tract for hours.
And it goes nice hand in hand with critter nutrition.
It does. The relationship to stress and cortisol, and of course the resulting inflammation.
Yeah.
Which has nothing to do with fly sprays, but it's fly season, so we need to talk about that in Tigapedia.
It does relate, Tigger, because my personality becomes inflamed every time I buy a can of toxic fly spray, and it poisons everything, but it doesn't get rid of the flies. It does relate.
That's true.
Amen.
That's true. That's a good point.
That is true.
And when you're full of inflammation, the best thing you want to do is go on a vacation with your dog.
You're right.
Yes.
Absolutely. It all ties together.
It does. That's how you relieve stress.
And all you have to do is ask Hedwig how she feels about that. That's a good heady question.
That's a good heady question. We're gonna go
vacationing with your dog.
The next one is, where would you like to go on vacation?
Oh, that ought to be good. Right?
There we go. Well, ladies, it sounds to me like the circus is about to begin.
And we're here with Dr. Tom Schell from Novell Research in North Carolina. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. It's very good to be here. I appreciate the invite.
I know you know this, but our listeners probably don't, that I have given you a nickname, which is Dr. Tumeric, because I have found that in the equine and veterinary world, really nobody knows as much about turmeric as you do. So I wanted Tom, or Dr. Tumeric, I should say, on the show so we could talk in more depth about turmeric. So, I'm going to begin with sort of the obvious, Tom, which is what drew you to, study and research turmeric?
That's kind of a long story. It goes back to back in the mid 2000s, so right around 2005. I was actually diagnosed with cancer and was going through some chemo and surgical treatments at that point in time. And I was a practicing veterinarian and was very familiar with the type of cancer that I had, and was seeing the downfalls and the negative side effects and the lack of efficacy with the treatments that I was undergoing. And I was familiar with those treatments as a vet because we use those same therapies for our patients. And so long story short is essentially I wasn't making any progress with my own therapy. And one day a journal came across my desk with an article in there about curcumin, actually. Looking at some cancer research that had been done on it.
Can you explain what curcumin is versus turmeric?
Sure. Yeah, I meant to throw the word turmeric in there, so I apologize for that. Now, so turmeric is the mother herb, or curcumin longa, and so curcumin is actually one of the active ingredients in turmeric. So you have turmeric, the herb, And of that, about 2 to 4% of turmeric is curcumin. So there's about 2 to 4% of curcumin, which is one of the main active ingredients present in turmeric itself, if that makes sense. So,
Yep.
if we give a pound of turmeric, 2 to 4%, depending on the harvest and the plant itself, is going to contain curcumin. So when we start to look at curcumin, that's the main active ingredient that is looked at in research. And, Tigger, I know you and I have kind of talked about this last week, and we'll get into that if you would like to. But the research I was looking at that got me started on this was looking at a 95% curcumin extract with certain cancer studies. So long story short, I read the research, began to dive into it and utilize it in my own therapy, which, I would like to knock on wood and say 10 years later, we're golden and good, and would like to give a lot of credit to that herb amongst many others. So that's how I got started down that road.
How have you applied it in equine and animal nutrition and supplements?
So the story is with that is after I started to make some improvements myself clinically, health-wise, cancer-wise, I began to then apply it to our patients. So I was primarily an equine practitioner. I was mixed animal by definition. So we saw companion pets and the equine at our facility. So the biggest thing I was looking at with curcumin in our equine patients was mainly looking at the anti-inflammatory properties, which is, how it demonstrates itself with the anti-cancer properties as well. So in a lot of our equine patients, we were doing a tremendous amount of joint injections, say, for instance, and looking at osteoarthritis in those guys, using a lot of medications, non-steroidals. And so I was very curious right around 2006 to see if, could I apply this research to these guys, find the correct dosages that worked, and see if I couldn't get some of these patients off of the non-steroidals and maybe drop down our use of steroid injections intra-articularly. So back in 2006, I think we did our first study that was published looking at curcumin combined with a few other anti-inflammatory herbs, and it was a 30-day trial looking at inflammatory proteins in the joints, clinical response to the patients, and it was pretty successful. So that was the first step that we took, and then we began to utilize it pretty much on a daily basis in our practice.
When, you have since formed a company, Curost. You're still heavily involved in research, which is something that I really love about what you do. How would you, advise owners of horses and dogs? How do they use turmeric or curcumin? What would be some of the pathologies that would lend themselves to this kind of plant?
Well, that's a long story, so I would say take a deep breath and we'll ride this one out here. Kind of a big open-ended question. So the long story short is that, you look at turmeric or we'll just use curcumin, as the active ingredient. They're just one of many, many anti-inflammatory herbs. So people automatically think inflammation, they think a bruise or a pain in the muscle or a pain in the joint. But, inflammation is pretty much connected with every disease pathology that we can put a finger on, from, a horse with osteoarthritis to an elderly human with Alzheimer's disease, to type 2 diabetes, to cardiovascular disease, to Parkinson's, to allergies, gastrointestinal problems. Okay, so most health conditions are tied into the inflammatory response. I think, as we just mentioned, anything from allergies to cancer to diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, osteoarthritis, tendon injuries, ligament injuries. It's all tied into inflammation. And most people think, when you think of inflammation, you think of the acute phase of inflammation, which is basically, 5 cardinal signs, which are redness, heat, pain, swelling, and loss of function. And that's true if you hit yourself, with a hammer, on your foot. You're going to experience all 5 of those stages, and that's acute inflammation. But what we're mainly trying to target is the chronic inflammatory response. And that is what's tied into most health conditions that affect horses, pets, people in today's day and age. And that's an entirely another story. But in terms of, so how do you apply turmeric or curcumin? Well, the whole basis here is to try to curb the inflammatory response. We're not looking to shut it down. In scientific lingo, we say down regulate. So we want inflammation to be present, but we want it to be present at a controlled or normal level. So we run into problems when a level gets too high. So as I like to refer to it to a lot of people, we can have maybe a scale of 0 to 10 of inflammation. 0 would be no inflammation present. 10 would be excessive inflammation. So let's just say the average person, horse, dog, is maybe at a 5. So if we have different lifestyle influences, environmental factors, dietary factors, that's going to predispose us to a higher level of inflammation, maybe pushing 7, 8, maybe 9, and that's going to contribute to health problems. So what we're looking to do is to down-regulate it. We're looking to pull back on the reins a little bit, control it, get it back down to a level of 5 or 6, if that makes sense. So we can apply and use turmeric or curcumin in any condition. Any condition. There's not a single condition that I have not found benefit in using that herb with. The ultimate question is a lot of people email me and say, hey, I would just like to use turmeric, or I would like to just use curcumin. And, and I do have my opinions on that, which is, a whole other story. I don't know if we want to discuss that here tonight, but it's definitely got a lot of applications in anything from just open wounds to diabetic conditions or allergy conditions or glaucoma or ocular problems, allergies, it goes on. It's not just something for the joints, but inflammation is tied into everything. So it's very valuable.
So when you're using curcumin extract, which is what you primarily use with the Curost formulas, how does the role of what the horse's diet is relate to the either effectiveness of curcumin or how quickly it can work in the body? Have you seen a correlation?
The ultimate question that everybody always raises because they read things online is the bioavailability or the absorption of curcumin. And, it is true that there is a lot of research out there that says, hey, it's very effective in test tube studies or in cell cultures, but we just can't seem to get high enough blood levels in people to really make it worthwhile. And I've researched the herb for 10 years now, a little bit over, and I do agree that bioavailability is a factor in terms of we can give curcumin to a horse and run serum assays on them and barely detect curcumin or curcuminoids, 2 hours post-ingestion. So I agree with them there. But the other side of the coin is that despite having very, very low levels in that horse's serum 2 hours post-ingestion, for some reason we are seeing reduction in inflammatory proteins in arthritic joints.
That's huge. Yeah. That's huge.
So it's working, and that's the ultimate question, and that's what everybody's always debated. Because you see clinical studies either looking at bioavailability or you see studies looking at efficacy. But it's very, very rare to see studies that are doing both, looking at efficacy and bioavailability, because they don't tend to agree with each other. And, on one hand, a researcher can say, serum levels in these human trials were extremely low and it's just not even worth pursuing. And then you can have another study looking at neo-osteoarthritis in a person, and the person benefits clinically in a very short period of time. So something else is going on there. And I've always believed personally that when you look at the inflammatory process, it revolves around cellular signaling and cells talking to each other. And cells throughout the body talk to each other through protein release. And so it's kind of like, I think as I had mentioned to Tigger once, that it's kind of like telling somebody a secret here on the East Coast and having that secret transfer or move across the country to the West Coast. And so it's not a matter of absorption. It's a matter of getting that signal or that secret set in the pathway, and then it basically takes off from there. So my personal feelings is that curcumin actually works through the GI tract, working through the immune system at the GI level, which then turns on or turns off signaling, which then impacts the rest of the body. And that has been shown in a few research trials here more recently on the human side. So we know it's working, but it it goes against what most researchers are trying to show in terms of bioavailability, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you and I have talked about this, but we know that there's a lot of turmeric and curcumin formulations on the market that include piperine or black pepper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit for both of us, since we're both on the same side of that fence,
Sure.
about piperine?
Yeah, I've never actually used it. Piperine or black pepper, when they use it in combination, and black pepper is an herb itself used, and there are some benefits to it. But when used with curcumin, it does inhibit conjugation at a liver level. So what it does is it prevents basically the curcumin from being broken down, thus, quote unquote, making it more bioavailable to the body. And it does increase serum levels. There's no doubt about it. But when you look at the timelines with serum levels and increasing it, it's generally about 2 to 3 hours post-ingestion. So if you take it at 8 o'clock in the morning, usually by 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, you're going to have peak levels, and then it drastically drops off very, very quickly. So you have to raise the question of, okay, is it even worth it? Because when you really look at even the levels that piperine are adding it to the curcumin, it's really not dramatically that much higher than just taking curcumin by itself. So you have to kind of step back and look at it again. I've never utilized black pepper with the herbs. So if you just step back and look at turmeric itself or curcumin that, obviously comes from turmeric, it's a fat-soluble herb. Just like several vitamins are fat soluble, either they're fat soluble or water soluble. So in reality, taking curcumin with a meal or turmeric with a meal that contains fat is going to automatically enhance the absorption of bioavailability of that herb just naturally because it's fat soluble. And in a lot of research studies, from what I can gather, most of the time when they're doing serum levels on these human patients, there's no mention of food. So I don't know whether if these patients are fasted when they're administering the curcumin, and that is what's impacting bioavailability. Is that why we have such good results in horses? Because the curcumin and other herbs are given with a meal that's obviously going to contain natural fats. We really don't know. But turmeric itself, contains natural volatile oils that are present in it. And so given that, if you step back, and you look at the creator above who created these plants, these herbs, those natural oils are present for obvious reasons because the chemical constituents of that herb, curcumin being one of them, is fat soluble. So the oils are present to actually naturally enhance the absorption. So what we use for the most part is there's a patented 95% extract called BCM95, and we've used it for probably about 10 years now. And the difference is that it's a concentrated extract of curcumin, but it's added back to the volatile oils from the turmeric root. So they're extracting the oils from the turmeric root, it's extracting the curcumin, and then they're combining the two together. So we're actually enhancing absorption just through the natural volatile oils that are present. And looking at their studies and that product itself, BCM95, is out of India by a company called Arjuna. And looking at their comparison studies, they've got about 7 times the blood level of even a piperine extract. And their blood levels maintain for about 6 to 8 hours post-ingestion versus 2 to 3 hours with something like a piperine. So we use, for the most part, like I said, we use BCM95, but even, in some patients, we've used straight up 95% curcumin extract, but we will, we always use it in combination with other herbs, and we will combine it with generally some fat providing herbs such as flax, or even add a little bit of oil to the feed, just to enhance absorption. And to be honest with you, just a straight curcumin extract combined with other herbs, as long as we've got a fat medium, works pretty well.
Do you find that it makes any difference what the horse is eating when they take curcumin? In other words, if they're on a highly processed diet, does it take longer to work? If they're on a whole food diet, does it work quicker?
Well, you're opening up a whole can of worms there, I think.
I love to open up cans of worms.
I've never really looked at it in terms of, does it work better if we're on a whole food diet?
Tom.
I knew you were going down that road. So, if you're opening up the whole book, in terms of diets, that takes us back to, the inflammatory process and for decades on the human side, most of our research that we look into is extracted from the human side. So we look at human research that's of interest, and we start to dive into it in horses, because there's really no huge difference between the species other than they walk on four and we walk on two. And maybe our hindguts are a little bit different. But aside from that, there's a lot of similarities. So when you start to raise the question of diet, then I start to raise the question of, okay, do we have leaky gut syndromes going on in these horses, that is mirroring what they are seeing in human research? And the answer to that is yes. And so going along those lines, if we want to start talking about leaky gut syndrome is then tied into the inflammatory response, which is then tied into immune dysfunction. So to answer your question, the whole food versus commercial foods or processed diets, I do lean towards the whole food diets. And the one research study we did last year, I think with 83 horses, I believe in the study, we were looking at changes in the microbiome present in horse feces, looking at some research that had been done over the past decade in metabolic or laminitic horses, showing that they had a overgrowth of lactobacillus bacteria present, which is normally a very, very small percentage of the microbiome. But in laminitic horses, they were seeing a much larger percentage. And so what we did is we looked at 83 horses, culturing out lactobacillus, and indeed, there is a direct connection between higher lactobacillus counts and certain pathologies in the horses, whether if it's metabolic or COPD, inflammatory airway disease. There's definitely a connection there. And as part of the trial, we were looking at certain parameters to indicate that maybe we might have some leaky gut going on. And so we did have a connection. The higher the lactobacillus count, the more evidence there was of leaky gut. So the conclusion, which I know you're very well aware of, Tigger, is that the higher the lactobacillus count, the more indications we had of leaky gut. Mm-hmm. That group of horses were on processed feeds. And second off, to put the icing on the cake is that most of those horses were also fed, I believe, a minimum of 5 or more synthetic-based supplements, meaning artificial ingredients. So, if we're looking at a vitamin C or vitamin E or a lot of the other vitamins and minerals, they're present in their synthetic form versus whole food form. So the conclusion to that trial is that the horses that had the lowest lactobacillus counts and least evidence of leaky gut, those owners actually either fed no grains or they fed something as simple as whole oats or whole sunflower seeds or whole barley, and they did not utilize synthetic-based vitamin mineral supplements. Does that answer your question? I knew you were looking for
perfectly. Yeah. Tom, thank you so much. I want to remind everyone you can go to novelresearch.com and find the line of Curost products, I think all of which have the curcumin extract in them. Am I correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And really, if you're looking for curcumin or turmeric, Curost is the place to go, because Tom really is the Dr. Tumeric of our industry. And so I highly recommend his products, and he's very easy to talk to, as you can see. The last time we talked, which was, less than a week ago, our usual conversations are about 2 hours because we just get going. So thank you very much, Tom, for being on Healthy Critters.
You're very welcome.
And
my pleasure.
I encourage everybody to, email Tom or go to his website, and he makes excellent whole food turmeric formulas.
Hello, Hedwig.
Tigger and Patty, oh my God, what an amazing thing that you have called right now.
Why? What are you doing?
Do you know where we are? Do you have any idea?
No.
We are waiting for
Ah,
Well, Tigger.
I am shaking with excitement.
Well, that's awesome. I want a cheeseburger.
Well, you can't have mine, Patty. Forget it.
Okay. I was just kidding, Hetty. I would never take one of your cheeseburgers.
Yeah,
I
you
will
would-
order
you would
one for
live.
you if you'd like.
That's very sweet of you, but I think it would be very cold by the time I got it.
Probably, yeah. Now it's
Yeah.
stuck.
Yeah.
We have a question for you, Hetty.
Well, I have answers.
We want to know what your advice is to other dogs whose owners may be experiencing the blues, sort of bummed out, depressed. What's your advice to dogs dealing with humans who don't feel so good?
Well, so I think there are always two approaches to this sort of thing, and I recommend trying each one to see what works best. The first thing you can do is be especially attentive to your human. That is what my sister does. Should my human be anxious or worried about something, she becomes more protective of the human, and it's always sticking right close to her. Yes, right close, right against the legs, running down the aisle to see what is wrong, taking piles of clothing, lying on them. I mean, these are certainly comforting things that a dog can do, especially a sweet sort of dog like my sister. So that's really one option. Yes, one option. And I do that too in the mornings, for example, regardless of whether my human servant is sad or not. I go up for my scratchies and therefore give her great pleasure to give me scratchies.
Alrighty.
And then the other option is, should you feel that your servant is malingering more than actually suffering from a problem, what you need to do is remind that person that he or she has a responsibility to a small dog. And that really anything else is
There it
meaningless.
is. There it is, Tigger.
We knew it.
We knew it. Well, Hetty, I think that's very reasonable.
Okay, Hetty. Well, enjoy your cheeseburger, and thanks for the tips, which we will pass on to all the canines out there.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And one other thing I forgot to mention just quickly. If your servant is really sad, you can offer them a small bit of your cheeseburger.
That's a nice gesture.
What happens if they're a vegetarian?
Then they have so many problems that you probably can't save them.
You open the door,
words.
Tig. You opened the door.
I did.
Well, thank you, Teddy, so much. That was very good advice.
Bye.
Okay, bye,
Bye.
Hetty.
So we are at our Tigopedia section of our show today, and I know, Jennifer, you would like to weigh in on this topic too. There's a lot of stuff that's out there, and Tigger, I want to talk to you or ask you questions about fly spray.
Oh boy.
So, I always there's such a broad spectrum of things that we can obviously do with fly sprays and horses and whatever. And I have two specific questions that I would like to ask you about. And then Jennifer, whatever you feel, please lead away. But my first question is, I know there's a lot of people out there because fly season is coming, and they all say the same thing. Well, why don't we just do the feed-throughs? Do these feed-throughs work?
I have never used the garlic feed-throughs.
Right.
But anecdotally, I have heard from a number of people that on some horses it works really well, on some horses it works moderately, and some horses not at all. And
Okay.
it may have to do with the quality of the garlic that the company is using. So I think the best garlic products for horses is made by Springtime Feed.
Yes, that is so interesting that you said it, because I have a friend that used to use Springtime um, products, and one of the things that she loved, I believe, was their feed through fly stuff, which was a garlic supplement.
Yeah,
So,
they have
okay.
the best quality garlic that I have been able to ascertain.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, because I have different people that have talked about different types of feed throughs, and obviously some of these are going to be more synthetic and have other stuff. I know they're, um, um, I'm trying to think of the one product that I know a lot of people use around here, and they say it's great, but it's synthetic, but it's also, and it's got some garlic base to it, but nothing, all natural. But every horse on the farm has to be on it. You know what I mean? It's not like you can just
Mm-hmm.
do your own horse. So you've got to. So, I mean, years ago, I don't know if you remember this. I used to do the fly predators,
Yep, I
and
still
and
do them.
yeah, and I really always felt like that was kind of a nice avenue to try to do that. But if you don't do that and you have to go to a topical, what is your recommendation for topical? If somebody wanted to stay holistic, and keep it real simple, what do you feel works?
Okay, so there are 3 basic recipes that I personally use.
Okay.
So get your pencil and
Oh, I
paper
have it.
ready.
I wrote 3 recipes. Please, Miss Pedia, continue.
So the first one is the easiest one. It's 1 quart of apple cider and 1 teaspoon of citronella oil. Now, the key is the citronella oil. You have to get it from a health food store. It's 100% pure. You don't buy the stuff that you use for, citronella candles at the hardware store.
Okay. Okay. And so, okay, say that again. It was how
1
much apples?
quart apple cider vinegar and 1 teaspoon citronella oil.
Okay.
My horse is going to smell like a pickle.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do get the scent of maybe you want to toss a salad.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, you may get
Would
a
you
little
like
hungry.
croutons with that, ma'am?
Yeah. That's a good name for a horse, crouton.
Oh, I
It is
like
a
it for a
good
little
name.
kid's pony. Crouton.
Yeah.
Oh, that would
Right?
be adorable. Buckskin.
Oh my
Crouton!
gosh. Oh, toasted crouton.
Only if it's a quarter horse, it would be toasted crouton.
Oh God, that is so cute. Okay, sorry, sideline there.
Okay, so the
right.
second recipe is 2 cups of white vinegar,
Right, okay.
1 tablespoon of eucalyptus oil, and a cup of water.
Okay.
And the third one is one I actually got from Dr. Joyce Harmon, the holistic veterinarian.
Yeah.
She uses as a base witch hazel.
Okay.
And then she adds 1 ounce of citronella or 1 ounce of tea tree or 1 ounce of eucalyptus oil. She said that you could also combine all 3 oils, but not more than that. So her base is witch hazel, then an ounce of citronella or an ounce of tea tree oil or an ounce of eucalyptus or and I'm guessing if you've got really bad big deer flies and stuff like that, just combine all 3 of those essential oils with the witch hazel.
Okay. So out of the 3 that you've done, which one do you use the most?
Oh, the apple cider vinegar with citronella.
And how long do you think that stays on their coat and repels the flies?
Okay, so let me back up. There are some things that I do to reduce the fly population.
Right.
Fly predators,
Right.
diatomaceous earth. And do you remember, Patty, the Amish fly repellent?
I don't know.
It's where you take the plastic Ziploc bags, fill them half with water, put the penny in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have that, in the summer outside of each of the stalls.
Well, remember, I used to do that at Farfield when we
Yes.
had,
At the grooming area and stuff. And it's so stupid, but it really works.
Well, and we should tell people the whole point in what this is supposed to work is that it's supposed to scare the flies away, I guess, for lack of a better term.
The
reflection, because they think it's a predator, right? Isn't it supposed to reflect? Isn't it supposed to? That's what someone had told me, that it's supposed, I don't know if there's a wasp that eats certain flies or whatever, but it's supposed to represent some sort of predator to them. Have you heard that?
I thought that they just got scared at their reflection of the light and the water, and that
Huh.
when
Because
they
you
looked
say
at
you put a penny in. I never
Uh-huh.
put a penny. I just
I
did a
put a
little
penny
Ziploc
in.
bag. Have you ever heard of that, Jennifer, before?
Now, I have not heard specifically of the Amish version. I have heard of the version where you put water in a plastic bag
Right.
and you hang it up and it's supposed to repel the flies.
Yes.
I have never talked to anybody who's either tried it or had an opinion about it except on Mythbusters. That's the only place I've ever seen it.
I've never heard doing it with a penny. That's a new
I've never heard of the penny part of it either. Hey, what have you got to lose? A Ziploc baggie and a penny.
right.
And
a
some
penny.
water.
And
Yeah.
water. I've wasted a
Water.
lot more money on that than lots of other things. So why not try it, right?
Well, and I mean, like we were talking about, I have used the Ziploc bag before, and I do feel like it helped. Tigger says she feels that her thing helps too.
You know
which
what
is,
my favorite one is?
What?
A fan turned on high.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, that's not a bad one.
Little buggers, as soon as they take off, whoosh, they're gone.
But I think the point that we're getting to is you can't just rely on fly spray.
You have to have
Right.
a multi
It's a
faceted approach.
multifaceted.
Yes, absolutely, you do. The fly predators, I have never heard. I have not heard anything but fantastic reviews about
They're
fly
great.
predators.
Right.
Thank you very much, fly predator people. You
Right.
need to advertise with us.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Hello.
Absolutely.
I've never heard anything but good reports from them.
Mhm.
Now you have to have a specific situation for them to work properly.
Right.
Yes,
fly,
you do.
I love your fly spray recipes. The one I'm using right now is commercially available, but all of the ingredients are just essential oils from
Right.
eucalyptus and citronella, and I want to say there's rosemary in there, and I think there's one other. It's something that smells a little bit like cinnamon in there, and then
Well,
mix it with water, and it's reasonably effective.
It's interesting. There's been a lot of rain in Houston, as we have talked about in previous episodes, but along with that came these biting gnats. They made national news, and it was interesting. And
It's
seriously,
the national news, Nat.
I mean, it was really
What kind of bugs are those? It's the national news, Nat.
national news gnats. They're NNAs, but they
No. National News NNGs.
NNGs.
Yeah.
Okay, that's true.
That's true.
But they said vanilla. Use good old fashioned vanilla. And I use essential oils. I use frankincense and lavender every day. And I was not being bitten by them. And I kept thinking it must have been the frankincense or the lavender. And I gave that to some other people. It didn't work the same. So the TV was recommending use just drops of vanilla. Kind of interesting. So it's amazing what different things. But I guess they're also, those types of bugs are also affected or attracted to your breath.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a
And-
lot of them that the carbon dioxide is an
Yeah.
attractant. That's mosquitoes amongst them. Yeah,
Right.
and there are so many different kinds of flies. I learned this chatting with a gentleman who is in the bug spray business,
Mhm.
that the flies that you see in the barn, the little black
there's
ones that we all call
career.
house flies.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not all house flies. Some of them are one kind of fly, and the others are one's a blood sucking fly, and one isn't. Even
Yeah.
though they look exactly the same, and they hatch in different conditions. One hatches in manure, and the other hatches in decomposing organic matter, like piles of leaves. And he was
Right.
going through all these different scenarios. I think it was the guy that makes the fly predators. Now that I think about that,
Huh.
understanding how the flies feed, and understanding, or bugs more accurately for this conversation, understanding how they feed and what conditions they hatch under allows you to change your management strategies to attack the particular kind of bug that you've got bothering your animals. Well, it's
Wow.
hard for us. Well, that made sense because right next to the barn, across the driveway, is a composting area where they compost dead leaves. Guess what we've got?
Wow.
Jillions of flies that hatch under those conditions. So there's nothing we
Wow.
can do about it. It's in the next door neighbors.
Right.
And it's great compost, grows great vegetables, but not really great for the horses for flies. So we've really started using heavily this the herbal formula, which was very similar to the third one you explained,
The citronella, tea tree, eucalyptus with witch hazel.
With witch hazel. It's very similar to that. It doesn't have the citronella, I think, is the one it doesn't have in it. But it's very similar.
Interesting, yeah.
And I'm very pleased with it in that it works just as long as the nasty synthetic stuff that kills everything on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It lasts just as long. It doesn't cost me
Yeah, that was my
anymore.
question that I had asked Tigger. So that's a good.
The key is the oil.
Yeah.
Because the oils are
is what stays on.
Sticks. And when I say it lasts just as long, that means I have to put it on twice a day. But
right, that's not bad.
But the nasty toxic stuff I have to put on twice a day too, so not losing anything.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say is, you remember there was the, I think it's still around, there's a fly spray recipe that uses Avon Skin So Soft.
Yes, there's many of those.
Yes.
And the reason I don't use it is two reasons. One, it's just loaded with chemicals, even though it has a wonderful scent. And Avon is one of the companies out there that still tests on rabbits, putting the chemicals in their eyes.
Oh,
and I can't support a company that does that. So,
I can't either.
I didn't know anybody did that anymore.
Yep. It's amazing. Like L'Oreal does it.
Get out of here.
Yes. A bunch of them.
Shame on you.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shame on you. So the conclusions to Tigapedia, our take-home message from Tigapedia fly sprays is have a multi-prong approach.
Yes.
Fly predators are your friend.
Yes.
Yep. So is Diatomaceous Earth.
And Diatomaceous Earth is your friend. Yeah. We'll save that for another conversation on good uses for Diatomaceous Earth because it's a multitasker.
Yes, it is.
And we'll save that for another one later on. And the third takeaway is
Amish fly repellent.
That's three.
Right.
Amish fly repellent. And number 4 is there are good natural herbal based recipes out there that are effective when used appropriately. So if you didn't write them down, you need to hit the rewind button.
Right. We should post this on the Facebook page because a lot of people
That's a good idea.
will
Put
like
them up
this.
on your Facebook page.
And I also think something so important to also mention is that, indeed, Tigger, many of my questions can be a lot of fun.
And we'll end with that.
Yeah.
Welcome to Critter Nutrition. Today we're going to talk about stress and the gut-brain connection. One of the most common issues in horses of all lifestyles and ages is stomach ulcers, also known as equine gastric ulcer syndrome. Signs of this health challenge can be weight loss, poor body condition and hair coat, reduced appetite, decreased performance, poor attitude, including irritability, resistance, reluctance to go forward, increased spookiness, less focus, girthiness, sensitivity to being groomed, and colic. The underlying root of gastric ulcers is stress. The stress can come from a variety of causes: training stress, shipping stress, competition stress, large meals of processed feeds, limited hay, limited pasture, medications, and illness. There is also the stress from a horse in a new turnout situation, with a new pasture mate or being moved to a new barn or stall, the stress of the humans around the horse, the stress of the rider and the trainer, the stress of the other horses. There can be stress from abrupt weather pattern changes as well as long-term weather extremes like drought. The conventional approach to ulcers is the use of omeprazole, also known as Gastrogard. This proton pump inhibitor reduces gastric acid secretion. It literally turns it off to give the mucosa time to heal. There is no question that omeprazole works, and most horses with gastric ulcers are healed within 4 to 6 weeks. But oftentimes we see horses treated for gastric ulcers develop another gastric ulcer weeks or months after treatment. Back on to omeprazole these horses go, and the merry-go-round of medicine and relapse continues. When a horse feels stress, the body ramps up the production of cortisol from the adrenal gland. The horse's brain releases norepinephrine and communicates with the gut, sending news of stress altering what it would normally do so that the mind and gut can fight off the imminent stressor. This is a beneficial response to imminent stress, the fight or flight reaction. Chronic stress, however, causes the stress hormones like cortisol to be released frequently. The brain-gut axis triggers low-grade inflammation, resulting in decreased nutrient absorption and less blood flow to the GI tract. Chronic stress disrupts the immune system, desensitizing it to cortisol and heightening the inflammatory response. Excess cortisol can increase blood sugar levels, decrease protein synthesis, lower immune function, and reduce prostaglandin production. Prostaglandins in the GI tract protect the mucosa from the acids of the stomach. High levels of cortisol over a period of time have effects on the brain. Neuroscientists at the University of California, Berkeley, have found that chronic stress triggers changes in brain function and structure. Some of the effects on the brain of chronic stress include reduced ability to learn or remember. It can shrink the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex that is critical for control of impulsive behavior. And it reduces levels of critical neurotransmitters, including serotonin and dopamine, which play an important role in mood, learning, concentration, appetite, and sleep. There are two kinds, fundamentally, of stressed horses. You have the equine internalizer and the equine extrovert. The equine extrovert generally makes it very clear to the humans that he or she does not feel good and is stressed. This is the horse who overreacts to stimuli, who lets you know in no uncertain terms there is a boogeyman in the corner of the arena. These horses don't hide the fact that their tummies hurt. The equine internalizer is a much more difficult read. This is the horse that doesn't display outward symptoms of stress. These are the stoic horses, the ones that are harder to read and the symptoms more subtle. We treat for gastric ulcers and then they return. Unless we eliminate all stress or all that our horse perceives as stress, it can be a constant merry-go-round. Equine calmers focus on the symptoms of stress, mainly the overreactive, spooky lack of concentration in horses. While these equine supplement calmers do work, they are missing a vital component. They don't deal with cortisol. When I formulated Biostar's Equilibrium many years ago, it was with my eye on the role of stress. That's why Equilibrium contains ashwagandha, the Ayurvedic plant that has been clinically tested for its ability to reduce cortisol and its contribution to increasing serotonin in the brain. Equilibrium has helped a lot of horses, and yet for some horses it wasn't strong enough. So this winter, I started testing a small group of horses on a new formula, using Equilibrium ground up as powder and adding another important Ayurvedic plant, holy basil, also known as tulsi. Holy basil is one of the sacred plants of Ayurvedic medicine. Like ashwagandha, it reduces cortisol and supports glandular, endocrine, and circulatory balance within the body system. For additional neurotransmitter support, particularly for serotonin, I added a milk protein called casein. This milk protein is also in Biostar's Theracalm Canine, the only calming formula that was able to stop my dog Crockett's car sickness and put all 4 of my Australian Shepherds into a sound sleep for several hours. A study published in 2010, Nutritional Neuroscience, by Choi, compared the ability of different proteins to raise the levels of brain neurotransmitters that influence mood. The study showed that in the cortex, the level of serotonin was 10 times higher after eating casein as compared to proteins from soy, wheat, barley, corn, and rye. I added undenatured whey protein to the formula because a protein found in undenatured whey protein called alpha-lactobumin can reduce cortisol and raise brain serotonin activity. An ever-growing body of study has shown that whey proteins and their peptides have a wide range of biological activities, including protection of the gastric mucosa by endogenous prostaglandin synthesis. Several studies have indicated that the quality of whey protein may play an important role in protection against gastric ulcers. Considering the gut-brain connection, adding undenatured whey protein is important support for horses under stress. Both casein and undenatured whey protein provide high amounts of the amino acid glutamine that plays an important role in healing intestinal mucosa and also nourishes the epithelial cells that line the small intestine. We tested this new formula, Theracom EQ, on a number of different horses, from hunters and jumpers with a lot of blood to layup horses to dressage horses and even a moody mare. The results in some cases were dramatic. Owners seen an improvement within 24 hours. The higher the stress in the horse, the quicker the results were apparent. Horses with moderate to low chronic stress needed to take Theracom EQ for a longer period of time to show the benefits of reduced cortisol, a happy GI tract, and increased brain serotonin. This unique blend of foods and plants that provide real biological support for horses under stress will be available soon from BioStar. The combination of cortisol reduction, serotonin production, and GI support make Theracom EQ an important nutritional whole food solution for horses under stress.
So we are now at Coffee Klatch. And
Ta-da!
Ta-da! And we have decided to figure out what is the best vacation spots with your dogs and cats or chickens, whatever floats your boat. I'm not sure how I'd feel about someone showing up somewhere with a chicken.
I don't know that the best vacation spot for dog is ever going to be the best vacation spot for chicken.
You don't know that.
Do you have a chicken
you travel with? You just don't know. You just don't know. And, you never know. I never thought that people would travel with their cats, and I did it. So, what do I know? So Tiggs, what have you come up with? I mean, because this was sort of an interesting thing. Tigger and I had a conversation about this earlier, Jennifer, which was basically that because my dogs are with me all the time, when I vacation, I don't bring them with me. But then it made me also realize I don't vacation, so which got me depressed, which we're not going to talk about that. But so Tigger, okay, so let's ask this question. Jennifer, have you ever gone on vacation with your animals, your dogs, not your horses, dogs, or cats?
I have taken my dog on vacation.
Where'd you go?
We went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
And
we rented a lovely cabin.
Awesome.
As did our friends, and they were dog-friendly cabins.
Oh, fun.
Yes, and it was a lovely vacation. I would go back to Gatlinburg many, many times. It's great. Can't say enough nice things about it. Now, to qualify that, we have a greyhound who loves to sleep 23 and a half hours a day.
Right.
So in the morning, we would get up and we'd take a lovely walk up and down the remote mountainside roads where our cabin was for half an hour. And she would be exhausted and had no desire to go outside again until evening.
Wow. So
we would go off and do our thing all day long, and then we'd get back in the evening, and she'd say, okay, let's go for another half an hour walk. And she was done. It was not the kind of a place where if you have a high-energy dog, weren't a lot of off-leash opportunities.
Okay.
Now, if you had a dog that liked to ride along with you on the bike, that would, obediently follow on the bicycle, you could do that if you were really, really fit, because everything was either straight up or straight down.
Right.
But if you have a dog who's happy with walking on a leash a few times a day and you want to hang out at the cabin and just relax, excellent vacation with your dog. Very relaxing.
Well, it's so interesting, as I'm sure we all found in this whole thing, how many places there are out there for you to specifically go on a vacation with your dog. Not take your dog with you, but go on a vacation with your dog.
I know. I never knew there were such places till I started to surf.
I know. I was shocked by this. I mean, Tigger, weren't you kind of blown away, or did you know that?
I was both blown away and I had this feeling that there was a percentage of the dog owning population that probably had unique resorts just for humans and dogs.
Yeah. I was so blown away when I got into some of these, and I was like I said to you earlier, I was like, oh, I'm sure that these have just been around for a year or two, and one of them was 27 years, and
Yeah,
I thought,
that's
okay,
amazing.
yeah, that kind of blew me away. So, so Tig, how about you? Have you ever gone on vacation with your animals?
No,
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
I've always worked. I mean, my dogs have gone with me when I work and I have to travel on the road.
right,
Um, but generally, my vacationing is limited to going to see family twice a
right,
year,
right,
and it's always on an airplane because they live in the West.
right.
So the dogs don't get to come. But one of the advantages has been that in my travels before I ever did BioStar, um, I've traveled in every state except Alaska.
Right.
Um, so I kind of know where the pet friendly places are,
Right.
and so I have sort of a list of like my top 4.
Okay, cool. What are they?
So the first one is Bozeman, Montana,
Oh, cool.
and it is obviously it's in Montana, but it's
Right.
where it's situated in Montana. Depending on which entrance of Yellowstone National Park you want to go in, you're either an hour and a half or 2 hours from 2 different gateways into the park. And
Neat.
Bozeman is this really cool, hip town where dogs are everywhere. And in fact, retailers put bowls of water out so that
Oh,
when you're
that is
walking your dog,
so
oh,
neat.
it's so
Yeah.
my mother lives outside of Bozeman, so I'm in Bozeman at least once a year, and every time I go into Bozeman and I'm walking down the street and there's like as many dogs as people,
Pretty
and they're all
great.
stopping to drink or sit at cafes or even go into some stores, and you're so close to Yellowstone, and you can take your dog into Yellowstone as
Oh,
long
that's
as it's on
awesome.
a leash.
Right.
So Yellowstone, of course, is worth, every American should go to Yellowstone at least once in their life, and how great to bring your dog along too.
Yeah, that's cool.
So Bozeman is at the top of my list. Second is Kennebunkport, Maine. I love Maine, but Kennebunkport happens to have a specific hotel called Captain Jefford's Inn.
Okay.
And you get to stay in these little carriage houses with your dog.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. And Maine is such a beautiful place.
Yeah.
And you've got beaches and forests and great weather, and it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful place to visit.
Yeah.
Carmel, California.
Mhm.
I love Carmel. And to drive down, from San Francisco, stop in Carmel for a few days, and then take the Pacific Highway down along Big Sur into Santa Barbara. I mean, it's
Yeah.
fantastic. In Carmel, there are no leash laws on the beach.
Oh, cool.
So I love that it's really dog friendly there. And my last choice, which isn't my last choice, but of the top 4,
Right.
is Cape Cod.
Really?
Oh, that is a spectacular place. And it's
Yeah.
big,
I've
it's a
never
big
been.
area. There's lots of pet friendly hotels and lots of pet friendly beaches.
Right. Okay.
So that would be a great vacation, just going up to Cape Cod for a week. Gee,
Well,
why don't I do that now?
yeah, really.
Hello?
Yeah.
You have the technology.
I do, and the car
And the car and the dogs.
and the dogs.
I think what I found so interesting in this whole process, because the first thing I thought of was I have a fifth wheel RV trailer, and which I bought to go to live in Florida and come back and forth so I could have my animals with me. And the thing that I love about having this is that you can stop at any RV park, most of these of which will take dogs. There are certain rules and regulations to it. They have to be on leashes as well. But there's so many places where you can just stop and sort of have your house on wheels and have your animals right there and make it talk about not causing stress. I mean, that makes it a little bit easier on the animals. And they're all over the country to do that. I mean, you can, go all over the country. But I think what I was so overwhelmed by was all these different vacation sites, which I think we all probably looked up. But I think there was 2 of my favorite There was one called flipflopdogs.com. Did you guys see that
I
one?
saw that
No.
one.
Yeah. And that was kind of neat because that led you to a bunch of other things. One other site was takeyourpet.com. All of these are sites. Some are ones that you can join their club and they'll send you updates, but very easy to navigate and go through. But I heard of two camps that were pretty cool. One was called Camp Unleashed and Camp Gone to the Dogs.
Oh my gosh.
Cute, right? And all of these have like these, and they have, all the information. And I think there's a lot of this all over the country, where you can find these websites that have these type of camps. But these are, I want to clarify, these are vacations with your dogs, not a vacation you can bring your dog. These are vacations with your dogs that they will have activities for your dogs. Like example, one of these, okay, what did it say? There was one that had, dog massages.
It's like a spa for your doggy.
Yes, it's like a spa. And then there was another one you could teach your dog to like water ski or something like that. And I thought, okay, wow. I mean, wow.
It
I can
really
see
is camp for your dog.
It's camp for your dogs.
Yeah.
And and again, one of the things about French bulldogs, which of course I have too, is they sink. So they'd probably
skiing.
no,
No.
so they wouldn't do that. So anything, and if somebody has an idea of that, if you have a specific breed, make sure that wherever you go, these are things that your specific breeds can do, because there are obviously some limitations to some breeds. But so many cool things with all of that. But two places that I saw that I thought kind of surprised me was Austin, Texas, was one of the number one. I don't know if you guys saw that. It was one of the number one places that have a lot of dog friendly places.
Yeah.
Mhm. Same sort of like what you were talking about in Montana, Tigger, where you lots of and it's such a cool hip place. Same sort of thing, cafes with the water bowl, all of that kind of stuff. But also,
Bozeman is a little bit more rural than Austin.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, I bet. I bet. But the other place was Sanibel Island.
Oh, in
Yes.
Florida.
That came up several times in my search, which I thought was interesting. But same thing, where a lot of places where you can bring your dogs, not actually go on vacation with your dogs.
Yeah.
But I thought that was so interesting. I learned a lot by looking
Dewey
at
Beach, Delaware, another one.
Really?
Dewey Beach, Delaware, and they have a lot of, because they have a dog friendly beach there, they have a lot of actual events. And that's one of the things when Glenn and I go on vacation, we love to find events to go to as part of our vacation. And
Right.
they have, a half a dozen or so giant sized doggy events at Dewey Beach each year. So
Wow.
that's a
Cool.
really fun one in Delaware. And there's another one called Woofstock in Toronto, Canada.
Oh my gosh.
Love it. Love the
Woofstock.
sound.
Yeah, Woofstock is the largest outdoor dog festival in North America.
Wow.
See, I mean, would you have ever known that? I would never have
not.
known. I would not have known this if
They get 200,000 people come to visit this thing.
That's bizarre.
That's crazy, and
Yeah.
and you can bring your dog to watch the dog stuff.
Oh
So
gosh.
again, that's another one that you can plan your vacation around. Woofstock.
Yeah.
That's
Tigger's
awesome.
writing that one down.
Yeah,
I'm so
I
excited.
am.
It's next weekend.
Oh my gosh.
Damn.
Pack Sabi's bandana in his bag.
Buddy, we're going on the road.
Yeah, that's right.
This
We're
was
going
such
on
a
the road.
this was such a fun coffee clutch because
It really, yeah.
it's a part of the universe I never knew existed.
I agree. I was totally shocked by what I found by just putting in favorite places or good places to vacation with your dogs, and I was like, wow, kind of cool.
And you know what really surprised me was the amount of, if you don't want to stay in a hotel and you want to go to one specific area and just stay there, like Carmel, for instance, or Sanibel, that you can rent a house.
I know.
And
yeah.
bring your dog.
Yeah. It's kind of cool.
So maybe we should mention some of the websites.
Yes. Yes.
Bringfido.com. I use that when I travel for business, just to find out where I'm going, if there's a pet friendly hotel. The choice hotel chains, which is Comfort Inn, Quality, Clarion, Econolodge, Roadway, Take Pets. Others are the Days Inn, some of the Hilton hotels, La Quinta, Motel 6, and Red Roof Inn.
Right. And some Best Westerns.
And
as
some
well.
Best Westerns.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone, and thanks to our sponsor, BiostarUS. You can find them online at BiostarUS.com.
Get the Horse Radio Network phone app on iOS or Android by searching for Horse Radio Network in the App Store. It's free and easy to use.
For details about today's show, go to healthycrittersradio.com, where you can find links, photos, and more information about our guests.
As always, we love your feedback. Please follow us on Facebook under Healthy Critters Radio.
Be sure to visit all the great shows on Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com.
Love your dog.
Hug your horse.
Feed your chickens.
Clean your litter box.
Dance with your goat.
Slither with your snakes.
Howl at the moon.
Hang with your hamster.
Party with your parrot.
Waddle with your walrus.
Outwit your otter.
And cuddle your cows.